There are many games that I love playing and have made a lot of great memories with, but none of them compare to the absolute best genre of video games to ever be known to man. Soulsborne. Now, I recently started playing these genre of games, like, a few months back when me and my brother tried to, finish and start new game experiences. And the first thing we started with was Bloodborne. Now, I know that I was gonna get destroyed in this video game, but oh boy, I did not expect the level of difficulty I was about to receive. Now, immediately after you start the game, you, have a cutscene, and the game just says, alright, now go ahead and do whatever you want. As soon as I started the game, I was greeted by a wolf. And died. I'm so happy right now. What I like with this game is its emphasis on figuring things out by yourself, which made figuring out the mechanics a lot more sweeter. Now don't take this the wrong way, I still died like 1,000,000 times. Sometimes when you just walk around, it's very easy to get lost because the game is very unclear most of the time. In the beginning of the game, I found myself moving forward in the path, but not really finding anything. Now this is a big problem with all the Souls games. They expect you to know where to go even when you beat a boss. The game isn't really clear on where you need to go next, because there is no map, no nothing, just you and murder spree. And it's pretty weird that the combat in the game is so good, because there is no combos, no skill trees, just simple smooth attacks, and I like the fact that the game has trick weapons. Why are they called trick weapons? Because it's pretty tricky for me to figure out how to use them. See what I did there? With the whole trick. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Now, let's talk about the start of me playing the game. Now, you're not gonna believe this. It took me at least 4 days of playing to actually get any progress. Now, just for an example, when I start a game and play it, I at least have a level of progress even in 1 day. But this game was brutal. Every chance it got, it just decided to beat me down and piss on my corpse because I decided to jump a few people and they jumped me back. Now, one piece of advice for the newcomers for this game: never attack a gang of people, because you will lose every single time. Now, in the beginning of the game, you are weak as hell, so much so that you could die pretty easily with just a few hits. Now, weirdly enough, I like that, not only because it forces you to adapt and learn the mechanics, but also makes you very good at the game. In Dark Souls, most attacks you could just block and take less damage, and you could even parry to activate a huge counterattack. But with this game, it's the opposite. This game heavily relies on your reflexes and dodges, and instead of a shield, you have a gun that can not only stun people, but also do a satisfying parrying system that just looks so cool. God damn, that gets me every single time. You could really feel the detail of the counter. I really like the parrying system and how satisfying it is. This should be the new parrying because it makes you feel like a badass. I love this parrying system. This is so satisfying, and it should be the new parrying system because it makes you feel like a badass when you pull it off. I really like the progression with these types of games. At the start, you literally get destroyed by every person in the game, but once you get some blood echoes and start getting stronger by upgrading your health, strength, and endurance, you really have a sense of progression. In the beginning of the game, you will not kill a single wolf. You go from that to nearly killing every wolf you see. It is a perfect way to motivate you to get stronger. Now, as much as I hate grinding in video games, it really reminds me of real life. Sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do, but by doing so, you get a lot of valuable skills to make you better equipped for the future. You hear that? Go to work, you fat bitch. Bloodborne is a perfect way to integrate grinding into a very beneficial way of preparing you for what's to come. You may be stuck on a boss, but you found a very good place to farm some blood echoes. Every mechanic and tool you collect in your journey can be a weakness to the boss, or something that will help you to attack from long range. Every upgrade, tool, and magic you collect is to further strengthen your arsenal as a hunter. So minor inconveniences like this fucking gun guy. I hate you, I hope you die. Anyways, Bloodborne has a very good progression system that's all good and dandy, but what about the boss? Holy shit. The bosses are so good. I've never seen bosses so immaculate in my life. Now, as much as I like Thor from God of War Ragnarok, he gets pretty easy when you get near the end of the game. But with Bloodborne bosses, no matter what level you are, you will get destroyed and lose a chunk of your health bar with one attack. Now, Bloodborne has this thing where depending on how close you are, you will either take more or less damage depending on the distance of the attack. But however, if you were to get to the source of the attack, you will either lose half or even all of your health bar. Now this sounds intimidating, but it's actually a very good positive to the game because for each attempt you learn a new move and you learn how to counter the bosses. It's actually not that bad. All you need to do is dive 4 times and you'll be good. The bosses force you to adapt to every single one of their movesets, so when they do use their attack, you will be prepared for it. Like most bosses in Soulsborne games, you're not meant to beat the boss so easily. The game makes the boss really hard, so when you do beat them, you will have the biggest adrenaline rush in any video game. And the mental strain of the bosses really have to be studied, because when I'm on a boss for a long time and I get them to like one hit, my heartbeat was pumping like crazy. I've never felt this way in my life. I felt this feeling when I beat Amelia, and that feeling was even better when I fought Morgoth. Not only does this show that the boss is difficult, but it also makes the victory so much more sweeter. Now sadly, not every single boss is godlike in Bloodborne. There are very bad bosses in Bloodborne. Now, most of the bosses in the game are amazing, and I would have loved if that was the case. Until you meet this motherfucker. He is without exaggeration the worst boss in the game. And I hate this boss with a passion, because instead of an epic fight with you learning the patterns of the boss and defeating them epically, but with this one, he runs away most of the time and lets his ghosts do the work for him. And when you're done with all the ghosts, then he fights you when you're in a weakened state. Whoever made this boss, I hate you and I hope your children become obese. Because who in their right mind would think, this boss is pretty fun. Let's make the most lazy boss in the entire series. I always thought that adding 2 bosses was a very lazy way of making a boss difficult, but by far he has to be the worst. And it's not even satisfying when you beat him. All I feel is relief because now I killed a minor inconvenience that will never appear again. And some bosses just let their minions do their job while they're just hiding in the shadows. Yeah, I'm talking to you. All this boss does is just summon people that can take out a chunk of my health bar while she's hiding in the shadows. There is no reason for this boss to have this much health because 1, it's not fun to just look for the boss, and 2, I've always loved the bosses with fast attacks and smooth quick steps because it really has a sense of an actual 1v1 battle to the death, and it really feels good using everything in your arsenal to beat that one boss that you've been stuck on. It really feels satisfying as hell once you've beaten it. And I like the fact that once you've beaten the boss, you have the motivation of fighting the next boss. And as for these bosses, they're not good. They're just lazy, cancerous garbage. Now back to the combat. I've already mentioned that it's fun and all that, but let's discuss why the combat is so good, despite having the same repeated moves. And that's because of the enemies you fight. Everyone is fast, but the con of all that speed is that you are as fast as the enemies you are attacking. And it really feels smooth as hell when you do a quick step on a really fast enemy. It really makes you feel like the man. And not only that, the weapons make the combat system really fresh, because each weapon has its own unique style to it. For example, the saw cleaver is one of the fastest weapons in the game, and you could switch from the close ranged mode to the long ranged mode. Another example is the holy blade. It has a huge emphasis on high damage and high stun. The first mode does high damage, but it's not as fast as the saw cleaver. And the second mode is very slow but staggers most enemies. But the point is, every single weapon has its own unique way of helping you out during the fight. But there is one downside to all these amazing weapons: weapon durability. Why the hell is there weapon durability? Now, the weapon durability is different in this game. Instead of you losing your weapon because you didn't repair it, instead, in this game, it just makes the weapon far more weaker, which I don't like at all, because not only do you have to minimize the amount of usage you use on the weapon, but it also just makes the combat a little less fun, because I want to mow down enemies without worrying about my weapon getting broken. It's almost like somebody wanted to make the game as fun as possible and also as hassly as possible. I don't want to be worrying about my weapon getting broken. I'm trying to experiment with my weapons and have fun, but no! I have to worry about weapon durability. That's just great. Whoever made that, just give them a gold star, because that's just amazing. I hate you. Now, the lore in the game is pretty interesting. There's nothing like going to a boss and wondering why he's even there. One of the most interesting bosses with the saddest lore has to be Father Gascoigne. When you see him, he's just killing some people, and of course you don't think much of it. You just overcome the challenge and kill him, but as soon as you search up this dude's lore, you feel so bad for him. Turns out he was infected with something that made him think you were a beast, which also explains why in a second phase he transforms into one. And that's not all. He killed his wife, has a daughter that committed suicide, and we also killed the grandfather after he found out that his first granddaughter died by getting eaten by a giant pig. And by the way, that was completely our fault. And as for the second daughter, she killed herself after finding out that her sister was dead. For a game called Bloodborne, it really lives up to the name, because in the lore, there's a lot of violence, death, and destruction in the lore. Bloodborne's lore is one of those games where you can't really piece it together yourself, and instead you need a MatPat leveled video to understand what's going on. I mean, how was I supposed to know that the people were infected by some ancient blood? And it is really enjoyable to find out what's going on in the game. But of course, you're mostly going to be focused on the action and combat rather than the interesting lore, but at least you can live with the fact that you know what's going on. Now let's get to the bosses, because I still have a lot of things to say about these amazing creatures that look weird as hell. Now, starting off, each boss is unique with their own strengths and weaknesses, but not all bosses are equal. For example, Amelia is a combination of the aggression of a hunter and a giant boss, because she has no weaknesses, and she attacks from all directions, having moves that are both close and long range. But with any boss, you could just overcome the challenge and just memorize the patterns, but Amelia is more on the middle side when it comes to bosses, because some bosses either excel at long or close ranged attacks as their main attack. And what I also like is the satisfaction of bosses. Some of them are straight up easy and don't really have a complete moveset like the others, but this could also be a positive, because as you fight the boss, they get more aggressive as the fight goes along. For example, the Shadow of Yharnam. All three of them have their own unique moveset, but they all repeat it. But the main thing in the boss is to kill them one by one, because each kill will just buff the others, which makes them more aggressive, and trust me, you can't kill them all at the same time. It's too much of a hassle. And this boss has to be one of the more acceptable bosses that do the tag team set before Elden Ring came along and kinda ruined it. The next thing is the hunters. They're kind of like mini bosses because of how fast and aggressive they are. The hunters are not that bad if you match their speed. Make sure that they use all of their vials, but they're kind of annoying to deal with, because in some cases your reflexes have to be on point more than the bosses than you actually face. Now, it's pretty fun, but it's kind of a hassle. Now, let's talk level design, because Bloodborne is a very nice game when it comes to the bricks, the grass, the flowers, and everything. It looks amazing. Each area has its own unique flow to it. You have a church riddled with holy priests trying to kill you. You have a place that has graduated students that kind of look like the secret sauce. And you have the final boss, who just has one of the greatest bosses in gaming history. I really like the level design, the enemies, and the NPCs that have great voice actors. Everything in the game design category in Bloodborne is just one of the greatest things ever. I love how each level is like one big circle to the place you need to be. And it's not done in a very poor way, it's done in a very loving and caring way. If you catch my drift. Okay, I'll stop. And it is a shame that this game is 30 frames per second, because as much as I love the animations, there's a frame rate problem with some enemies just feeling a little weird sometimes. But surprisingly, this was very minor. So minor, in fact, I barely even noticed it until now. Now, I'm probably going to get copyright claim for even talking about the music in Bloodborne, but I do not give a shit because the music in this game is amazing. I never thought a video game can have this much bangers to the point where it makes Kendrick Lamar look like a fraud. Just listen to the amazing music. Every track, every second of this music just feels like it's talking to me. The final boss music is so great because at the end of the game, you have a choice, and if you pick the wrong choice, you're forced to fight Gurman. Other than the amazing fight, the music really complements the fight, because you chose something that was wrong in Gurman's eyes, and even the music sounds like betrayal music. It feels like the music is telling you that you made this decision and you have to live with the consequences of your action. It's not only Gurman's track that's good, but also Ludwig's track and Lawrence's track. I haven't played the DLC, but it doesn't ignore the fact that they are bangers. I personally think that the final boss music is better, but they are both a close second because Ludwig is great and Lawrence is also great. And listening to Bloodborne music really showed me that music can be a really magical thing when it's done right. Another thing that people hate for some reason are the dungeon bosses, which is pretty outrageous because how can a dungeon with 3 unique bosses with each dungeon be repetitive? How can this be repetitive? I don't get it. You have the luxury of exploring a new place and also get new bosses to fight. Now, admittedly, if you're over leveled, I could see how you don't like them, but I think the dungeons are a way for under-leveled players and over-leveled players to both have fun. Now, this is more of a situational type of thing, so bear with me. I honestly think pro players, some of them at least, want to experiment on weapons they never tried before. So imagine you get a completely different weapon that's kinda underleveled but still usable, and boom! You got yourself a challenge. And as for the underleveled players, they will love it. The insane challenge and the nice textures would make any underleveled player happy because the bosses are challenging and the scenery is great. Which leads to my next point, the visuals. The visuals are really special. Even 8 years later, it still holds up, and things like this really makes me happy. Because this just shows that even if a game is old and has wonky controls, you can still appreciate the beauty that the game is offering. And I like the unique style of the game. It really stands out from every other Souls game. This has to be the most unique looking Soulsborne game in the entire series, because the scenery is so dark and depressing and it really fits the game's aesthetic, especially if you know the lore. Now, for the visuals, I'll describe it as despair, no hope, no way of saving people. Now, considering the fact that this game is called Bloodborne, the visuals really match the bloody scenery that the game is going for. And this game could also be the perfect place to take screenshots of very good photography. Trust me, I'm not manipulating the photo at all, it just shows how good looking the game is. Now, this is a genuine question. How does a game like Bloodborne even exist? Now, don't get me wrong, I played one of the greatest story games of all time, but how does Bloodborne outdo most video games that come out today? I mean, there are games that literally look like complete dog shit compared to their predecessor. Most AAA companies think about the money first and the game last, and in turn they make a very unpassionate product that doesn't even last for over a year. But Bloodborne is different. It is a game built with love and care. This is made by someone who truly cares about making good games, that don't only make a bunch of money, but also give what the fans what they want. It's truly an honor to live in this age of gaming, even though some of the games are complete doo-doo water. Hey guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this passion project that I made. I really love this game, and if you guys enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and check out my brain rot video. It's pretty good, and that's all I wanted to say. Bye. Please make a Bloodborne 2.